When you develop a website, you want to make it really easy for your client to be able to add their own content to keep the website just fresh and relevant. I'm in the middle of developing this website for my church, New City Eastlake, and I designed this kind of like list view of a calendar of upcoming events. And I wanted to populate this with the Webflow CMS so that these events are constantly changing and people start seeing this website as a resource where they can go and learn about what's going on at the church. But I knew that the church uses a Google Calendar to add all of their events, and I didn't want to have them have to go into the CMS, re-enter all of their info, and then start kind of doing double duty where they add stuff to the Google Calendar and then they have to go into the Webflow CMS and add it there. And so I used a Zapier connection to integrate Google Calendar with the Webflow CMS so that all the administrator at the church has to do is add an event to the Google Calendar, and it'll just stream it to Webflow and publish it live onto the website, and just as easy as that. So let's get started by jumping into Webflow first and creating our CMS collection. All right, so we're starting in Webflow first because before we jump into Zapier, we need to make sure that all of our collection fields are added here at the bottom. And that way, when we jump into the Zapier connection, we can link Google Calendar kind of inputs to Webflow CMS collection fields. So you kind of see over here, I've already added it, but just for the purpose of this video, we'll create a new one, and I'll call this Event Zapier. All right. And then I'll just let Webflow populate that. And then we want to add a couple of fields. So name, of course, will be the name of the event that's going on. And then using the date picker, there it is. We want to go ahead and use the date picker because there's a Google Calendar kind of like the API input. It needs this format, so you have to use the datetime picker. All right, and we're going to call this beginning time. We're going to make another one that's called end time. Another field of plain text that is just an event description. And that actually should do it for us. Let me double check and make sure. So all of this info here and the month and day are going to be populated by our beginning and end time. This is the name, that's the description. And then the RSVP, I've set that up as an email. And so we'll go ahead and add that as plain text and say organize your email. Create collection. Oops, I guess I do have to add that. Event Zapier. All right, so in order for it to be ready though, we do have to publish the site. So I'm gonna move out of the CMS and populate our site. Perfect. All right, so we're in Zapier. I'll make sure that Zapier is linked in the description below. And I simply clicked make a Zap. And this is kind of like the workflow for creating a connection. So we're gonna start with Google Calendar. All right, and the trigger is a new event. So in other words, whenever somebody goes into the Google Calendar and adds a new event, that's the trigger that begins this kind of like Zap. All right, and then we've got, this is kind of like my Google account, and then it's gonna let us choose a specific calendar that we wanna use. We're gonna use church events. Here's kind of letting us know what a sample looks like. All right, and then it's going to be looking for a sample event that it can kind of use to help me create the Zap. So I'm going to go ahead and create like just an example one, Zapier test, in my Google Calendar. I'm going to make sure that I add just a quick description that we can use. All right, so now we've got our test. And if I click fetch and continue, it's going to look for that event It's going to pull it in as a sample. Perfect, so the test was successful. All right, next is we've set up the trigger up here at the top. Now we're setting up the action. What do we want to do once Zapier recognizes that an event has been added to Google Calendar? And we want to choose Webflow and create a live CMS item. I'm choosing the website for New City Eastlake. And here's where we select our collection. So here's the event Zapier's collection that we created earlier. And now you see these are the form fields in the collection that we created. And we're just going to be matching a Google Calendar input to these fields. All right, so beginning time. There's various beginning times that the Google Calendar API offers. And the one that you want to use is this kind of complicated looking one here. This event begins pretty. It's kind of like a text field. And if I selected that, when I tried to use this Zapier, it would let me know that there was an error because it wasn't matching the time code picker. So we need to make sure we use that complicated looking event begins. And we're going to use the same thing for end. Use that complicated one. Event description, we're going to use the description here. Organizer email is right here. Name is the name of the, it says summary, but that's the name of the event. Slug I'm going to leave blank, and these I'm going to click no. It's not archived and it's not a draft. All right, so now it's telling me like, okay, here's how we're going to populate your item. Send test to Webflow. All right, so it's telling me a test was successful, an item was sent to Webflow just now. All right, so I'm going to hop over into Webflow, refresh my screen. And if I hop over to the CMS, in my event Zapier, there's now one item that's in there. And if I click on that, you can see that my items have been filled appropriately. All right, here we are back in the website portion where we're going to go ahead and add our collection. And I forgot to mention that once you see that your test of the Zapier connection was successful and all of the items in your CMS were populated correctly, go back into Zapier and make sure that you turn the Zapier on, and that way it'll start checking Google Calendar every 5 minutes to make sure no new event was added. All right, so we're going to begin by adding a collection list. So right now, this is just kind of the design that I did, but it's not actually integrated with the CMS. So, in the container, I'm going to add a fresh collection list, and I'm going to link it to our events. All right, and then I'm basically going to steal all of the CSS so that this starts to look like how we styled this. So the events wrapper is kind of like the div block that's wrapping this entire field. And so I'm going to grab the collection list and call this events wrapper. All right, and then each one of these events is wrapped in a single event container. So if I take one of the items and style it single event container, we now have what looks like these 4 columns. Next, I'm going to go ahead and add some list settings. You'll notice that I only want 3 events so that the content is not too scrunched up. So I'm going to limit the items 1 to 3. 1 to 3. There we go. And I also want to filter. So I want to make sure that in the future, I only want to see events populated in the CMS or here on the website where it's either today or in the future. So I'm just click 1 year. And in other words, I don't want events that have already passed to be populated in here. That would defeat the purpose because these are upcoming events. All right, so I'm going to save that. And then I also want to sort and I want the start and date time to be kind of like what is sorted, and I do want oldest to newest. All right, and that way, let's say there's a thing on the 29th, something on the 28th. I want the thing on the 29th to be second and not first, right? I want it to be in ascending order. All right, and then I'm not sure what collection item is, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that real quick. Collection item 1. I'm not entirely sure what that is, but oh well. All right, and then I'm going to start just simply dragging in these blocks of info. Okay, so my day wrapper is there, and then I'm going to grab the event and move it there. Wonderful. All right, so this is still, now this content is sitting inside of the collection, but it's not actually linked to the CMS yet. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of this, and we're going to move we're going to move this above the button. Perfect. There we go. And so now it's kind of looking like what we had before, but this is actually inside. All of this info is inside of the collection list. So all we have to do is link it to the CMS. So I'm going to have this get the text from the events, and I'd like for it to be just the day. So start time and date, and then under format, if I scroll to the bottom, I can get the day and the month. Perfect. So now you see it says 27, 28, and 29, and that's because it's pulling from actual events. All right, I'm going to do the same thing with the month. I'm going to use start time and date, and I'm going to scroll down, and I actually want it to use the short text. Okay, perfect. All right, and then for the event name, I want it to use the summary. So it's called summary in the Google Calendar API, but we called it, or its name in the CMS. All right, and then this is going to get a little complicated, but if you just follow along, basically this is the beginning time and this is the end time. And I used days in addition to the time because sometimes there are events that happen over multiple days, and so I wanted to make sure that there was something that let people know if that was the case. All right, so we're going to do start time, and we're basically looking for the day of the week, short. All right, and then here we want to do the starting time. And just the time, 12:25 p.m. All right, and then this next section, I made this a semicolon, but it should actually be a hyphen. There we go. And this will be the end time. All right, so we're going to do the same thing where we get the day and the month short, or the day and the week, I mean, and then get the time. End time, and we're going to get the actual time. All right, so now our times are finished. You'll notice over here, the church workday is 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. and ESL is 3:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. All right, second to last thing is our paragraph. We want this to match the event summary. All right, so now that's populated. And then next, this text link, we wanted to send an email to the appropriate person. And so I'm going to get email from events and RSVP contact. If you remember, we set that up in Zapier. That's the organizer email. All right, and then subject, we'll just call it RSVP. All right, and that's it. Just as easy as that, our CMS is now integrated with Google Calendar so that this content will be populated anytime somebody at the church adds an event to the Google Calendar. Within 5 minutes, Zapier will pick it up and publish it live to the Webflow CMS and to the live website. So, all right, thanks for watching this video, And make sure that you hit the subscribe button to get even more kind of tips and tricks on Webflow. And I'll also be doing other videos on branding and just kind of general graphic design subjects. So thanks so much for tuning in, and see you guys later.